I stared at the email in my inbox, my heart sinking into my stomach. The subject line read, "Congratulations. Welcome to Sterling Industries' summer internship program." But this wasn't meant for me. I'm Maya, a straight-A student from a small state school, and I'd applied to Sterling Industries knowing full well it was a long shot. Their internship program only accepted graduates from Ivy League schools. I'd sent my application anyway, because what did I have to lose? Apparently, everything. The email was addressed to Maya, but the content was clearly meant for someone else. The acceptance letter mentioned a stellar recommendation from Professor Williams at Harvard and praised exceptional performance in advanced financial modeling courses. I'd never taken advanced financial modeling, and I definitely didn't go to Harvard. My hands trembled as I scrolled down to find the sender's information. It was from Jessica, the HR coordinator I'd spoken to during my phone screening last month. She'd been polite but distant, clearly going through the motions with a candidate she knew wouldn't make the cut. I should have forwarded the email to the right person immediately. I should have been honest. Instead, I screenshot the acceptance letter and stared at it for 20 minutes. Sterling Industries was my dream company. Their Manhattan office was legendary in the finance world, and an internship there was basically a golden ticket to any career path I wanted. The Maya who was supposed to receive this email was probably already set for life, with connections and opportunities I could only dream of. But here I was, holding her opportunity in my hands. My phone buzzed. A text from my roommate Lisa. "Any word from Sterling yet? I know you've been refreshing your email all week." I've been refreshing my email for 3 weeks, actually. Ever since I'd blown my other 3 internship interviews with smaller firms. My student loans were piling up, and I was running out of options for the summer. My parents had already started dropping hints about me moving back home to work at my dad's auto shop. I looked at the acceptance email again. The start date was Monday, in 3 days. What if I just showed up? The thought was insane. I'd never done anything dishonest in my life. I was the girl who returned extra change to cashiers and reminded professors when they forgot to collect homework. But as I sat in my tiny dorm room, surrounded by rejection letters from every other company I'd applied to, the idea started to take root. I could do this job. I knew I could. My GPA was higher than most Harvard students, and I'd been working 2 jobs while maintaining my grades. I just needed someone to give me a chance. The acceptance email had all the details I needed: the floor number, the dress code, even the name of my supervisor, a woman named Diana who headed the Mergers and Acquisitions division. I grabbed my laptop and started researching everything I could about Sterling Industries, about Diana, about the other interns who would be starting with me. By 3 a.m., I had a plan. I was going to walk into that building on Monday morning and pretend to be the Maya they wanted. The worst thing that could happen was they'd figure out the mistake and send me home. But at least I'd have tried. At least I'd have had my shot. As I finally fell asleep, I had no idea that the real Maya, the Harvard one, was at that exact moment boarding a plane to spend her summer backpacking through Europe, completely unaware that she'd even been accepted to Sterling Industries. And I definitely had no idea that my fake internship would lead me straight into the arms of the company's impossibly handsome CEO. Monday morning, I stood outside the gleaming glass tower of Sterling Industries, wearing my best blazer and the most confident expression I could muster. My palms were sweating, but I forced myself to walk through those revolving doors like I belonged there. The lobby was even more intimidating than I'd imagined. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and the kind of modern art that probably cost more than my entire education. I approached the reception desk, where a perfectly polished woman with a sharp bob looked me up and down. "I'm Maya," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I'm here for the internship program." Her expression shifted from mild interest to something that looked almost like disdain. "Oh, you're the..." She paused, glancing at her computer screen. "The scholarship recipient." "Scholarship recipient?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Take the elevator to the 47th floor. Diana will meet you there." She handed me a visitor's badge with obvious reluctance. "Try not to get lost." The elevator ride felt like it lasted forever. When the doors opened, I stepped into a world of sleek conference rooms and expensive suits. A woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes was waiting for me. "You must be Maya," she said, extending her hand. This was Diana, my supervisor. I have to say, I'm curious to see how this works out. There was something in her tone that made my stomach clench. "I'm excited to be here." "I'm sure you are." She gestured for me to follow her. "Let me introduce you to the other interns." We walked into a conference room where 5 other students were seated around a polished table. They all looked exactly like what I'd expected: confident, well-dressed, with the kind of casual arrogance that came from never having to worry about money. "Everyone, this is Maya," Diana announced. "She's joining us from a state school." The way she said it made it sound like a disease. I felt my cheeks burn as the other interns looked me over with barely concealed skepticism. "I'm Brandon," said a tall guy with perfectly styled hair. "Columbia." "My dad's on the board at Goldman Sachs." "Sophia," said a blonde girl with a designer handbag. "Wharton." "My family owns half the real estate in downtown Boston." They went around the table, each introduction more intimidating than the last. "Princeton. Yale. Harvard." All of them had connections, family money, and the kind of background that opened doors before they even had to knock. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. "Maya. I'm looking forward to working with everyone." Brandon smirked. "That's it. No family business. No trust fund." "I'm here on merit," I said quietly. The room fell silent. Sophia actually laughed. "Merit," she repeated. "How quaint." Diana cleared her throat. "All right, let's get started. Your first project is to analyze the Patterson Group merger. I want a comprehensive report by Friday." She handed out thick folders to everyone. When she got to me, she paused. "Maya, you'll be working with reduced resources since you're new to this level of analysis. I hope you can keep up." The folder she gave me was noticeably thinner than the others. I opened it and found half the documents that everyone else had received. "Excuse me," I said, raising my hand. "I think there might be a mistake. My folder is missing several documents." Diana's smile was razor-thin. "No mistake. I'm easing you in gradually. We wouldn't want to overwhelm you." The other interns exchanged glances. I could practically hear them thinking, she's not going to last a week. But as I sat there, surrounded by people who expected me to fail, something shifted inside me. The fear was still there, but it was joined by something else. Something that felt like fire. They wanted to see me struggle. Fine. I'd show them what struggle looked like when it fought back. "I understand," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'll make sure to exceed expectations." Brandon snorted. "Good luck with that." As the meeting ended and everyone filed out, I stayed behind, studying the limited documents I'd been given. I had 4 days to prove I belonged here, with half the resources and none of the advantages. But I had something they didn't: hunger. And I was about to discover that sometimes, hunger was the most powerful tool of all. Especially when the CEO himself was about to walk into this conference room and change everything. I was still in the conference room at 9 p.m., surrounded by printed articles, financial reports, and empty coffee cups. Everyone else had left hours ago, but I couldn't afford to stop. With half the resources they'd given the other interns, I needed to work twice as hard to even have a chance. The cleaning lady had already come and gone, giving me a sympathetic smile as she worked around my paper fortress. The entire floor was dark, except for the conference room lights and the glow of my laptop screen. That's when I heard footsteps. I looked up to see a man in an expensive suit walking down the hallway, his tie loosened and his dark hair slightly disheveled. He looked like he'd been working late too, but there was something different about him. Something that made my breath catch. He was gorgeous. Tall, with sharp cheekbones, and the kind of presence that commanded attention. But it was his eyes that made me forget to breathe, dark, intelligent, and currently staring right at me with surprise. "You're still here," he said, stopping in the doorway. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize I wasn't supposed to." No, he interrupted, stepping into the room. "I'm just surprised. The interns usually clear out by 5. He moved closer, and I caught a hint of expensive cologne. "You're new." "I'm Alex." "Maya," I managed, trying to ignore the way my heart was racing. "Maya," he repeated, like he was testing how my name sounded. "What are you working on?" "The Patterson Group merger analysis. It's due Friday." He raised an eyebrow. "Mind if I take a look?" I wanted to say no. My work was nowhere near ready, and I'd been struggling all day with the limited information I'd been given. But there was something about the way he asked, not demanding, but genuinely curious, that made me slide the papers toward him. Alex picked up my draft analysis, his eyes scanning the pages with an intensity that made me nervous. After a few minutes, he looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. "This is impressive," he said finally. "You've identified patterns in the data that our senior analysts missed during the initial review." "Really?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Really? But..." He frowned, flipping through the documents. "You're missing about half the source material. Where are the rest of the financial statements?" Heat rushed to my cheeks. Diana said they were easing me in gradually. I got fewer documents than the others. Something flickered in Alex's eyes. "I see." He was quiet for a moment, then stood up. "Wait here." He disappeared into the hallway, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. Who was this guy? He dressed like an executive, but he seemed too young to be high up in the company. Maybe he was Diana's boss. 10 minutes later, he returned with a thick stack of papers and a folder that looked like it weighed 10 pounds. "These are all the documents from the Patterson case," he said, setting them on the table. "Plus some additional research our team compiled last month." I stared at the mountain of papers, then at him. "I can't take these." Diana specifically said. "Diana works for me," Alex said simply. The air left my lungs. "You're..." "Alex Sterling. I own the company." The room spun. I'd been sitting here for hours, complaining about my supervisor to the actual CEO. The man who could fire me with a single word. "Oh God," I whispered, "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." "Maya." His voice was gentle but firm. "Look at me." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "You have nothing to apologize for. You're here late, working harder than anyone else, and you've already produced better analysis than most of our senior staff. The question is, why is Diana trying to sabotage you?" The bluntness of his words shocked me. "I don't think she's trying to sabotage me. She's probably just... She gave you half the materials and told you it was to ease you in gradually. Meanwhile, she gave Brandon Williams, whose daddy bought his way into Columbia, the full case file plus our proprietary research notes." Alex leaned against the table, his gaze never leaving mine. "I know talent when I see it, Maya. And I know sabotage when I see it too." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "What happens now?" A slow smile spread across his face, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Now you show me what you can really do with the right resources." He gestured to the papers he'd brought. "I want to see your full analysis by Friday. Don't hold back." As he walked toward the door, he paused and looked back at me. "And Maya, next time you're working late, order dinner on the company card. You'll need your strength." After he left, I sat in the empty conference room, staring at the documents he'd given me. I had just met the CEO of Sterling Industries, and instead of firing me for being a fraud, he'd given me more resources and what felt almost like encouragement. I had no idea that Alex Sterling had been watching me since I walked into the building that morning. And I definitely had no idea that he was about to make my fake internship very, very real. But first, I had to survive the wrath of Diana, who was about to discover that her plan to humiliate me had just backfired spectacularly. Friday morning arrived faster than I'd expected. I'd barely slept in 3 days, surviving on coffee and determination, but I had something I'd never had before. A comprehensive analysis that I was actually proud of. The conference room was packed. Diana sat at the head of the table, flanked by several senior executives I didn't recognize. The other interns were arranged along the sides, their presentations neat and polished in matching folders. Let's start with Brandon, Diana announced, her voice carrying across the room. Brandon stood up, his confidence radiating as he launched into his presentation. It was polished, professional, and completely generic. He'd clearly followed a template, hitting all the expected points without offering any real insights. Sophia went next, then the others. Each presentation was competent but forgettable, the kind of work that would earn a decent grade but never change anyone's mind about anything. Maya, Diana called, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. You're up. I stood, my legs surprisingly steady. I'd prepared for this moment, and as I looked around the room, I realized I wasn't nervous anymore. I was ready. The Patterson Group merger, I began, has been presented as a straightforward acquisition. But after analyzing the complete financial data, I've identified several red flags that suggest this merger could be a significant liability for Sterling Industries. The room went quiet. This wasn't what anyone had expected. I clicked to my first slide, showing a chart I'd created after hours of data analysis. Patterson Group has been inflating their quarterly earnings by deferring maintenance costs and accelerating revenue recognition. When adjusted for these accounting irregularities, their actual value is approximately 40% lower than their reported assets. Diana's face had gone pale. That's a very bold claim. It's not a claim. It's documented fact. I moved to the next slide, showing the evidence I'd compiled. Furthermore, Patterson Group has significant environmental liabilities from their manufacturing facilities that haven't been disclosed in their financial statements. Sterling Industries would be inheriting approximately $200 million in cleanup costs. The executives were leaning forward now, studying my presentation with intense interest. I could feel their attention like a physical force. Based on these findings, I continued, I recommend that Sterling Industries either withdraw from the merger or renegotiate the terms with a significantly reduced offer price. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one of the executives, a woman with short silver hair, started asking questions. How did you identify the accounting irregularities? Where did you get the environmental data? Have you verified these liability estimates? I answered each question confidently, backing up every point with documentation. I'd done my homework and it showed. Finally, Diana spoke up. This is interesting work, Maya. But I'm not sure someone at your level should be making such dramatic recommendations. Actually, said a familiar voice from the back of the room, I think someone at Maya's level just saved us from a very expensive mistake. Everyone turned to see Alex Sterling entering the conference room, his presence immediately commanding attention. He was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my tuition, and when his eyes met mine, I saw something that made my heart skip. Pride. Alex, Diana said, her voice tight, I didn't realize you were joining us. I wanted to hear the intern presentations, he said, taking a seat, particularly Maya's. I've been following her work this week. The other interns exchanged glances. Brandon's face had gone red, and Sophia looked like she'd swallowed something sour. Maya, Alex continued, would you mind walking us through your environmental liability calculations? For the next 20 minutes, I presented my findings to the CEO of Sterling Industries, while Diana sat in increasingly uncomfortable silence. Alex asked sharp, insightful questions that pushed me to defend my analysis, and I found myself rising to meet his challenge. When I finished, Alex stood up. Thank you, Maya. That was exactly the kind of thorough analysis we need. He turned to the executives. I want Maya's recommendations implemented immediately. Cancel the Patterson merger, and have our legal team investigate the accounting irregularities she identified. Then he looked at Diana, my office. Now. As everyone filed out, Alex lingered behind. When we were alone, he approached me with that same unreadable expression. You did excellent work, he said quietly. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove myself. About that. He paused, studying my face. I know who you are, Maya. My blood turned to ice. What? I know you're not the Maya who was supposed to receive the internship offer. I know you're not from Harvard, and I know you've been pretending to be someone else. The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. I also know, Alex continued, his voice gentle, that you're the most talented intern we've ever had. The real Maya is currently backpacking through Europe, completely unaware that she was even accepted here. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The question is, Alex said, stepping closer, what are we going to do about it? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. I have to take this. But Maya. He looked at me with those dark eyes that had been haunting my dreams. Don't go anywhere. We have a lot to talk about. As he left the room, I stood there in shock. He knew everything. My fake internship, my real background, my desperate gamble to prove myself. And somehow, instead of destroying me, this revelation felt like it might be the beginning of something I'd never dared to hope for. I was pacing in Alex's office, my hands shaking as I waited for him to return. The entire wall was glass, overlooking the Manhattan skyline, but I couldn't appreciate the view. My mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. He was going to fire me. Probably have me arrested for fraud. My entire future was crumbling, and I had no one to blame but myself. The door opened and Alex walked in, his expression unreadable. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, just looking at me. Sit down, he said finally. I perched on the edge of the chair across from his desk, my back straight, prepared for the worst. I've been watching you since Monday, Alex said, settling into his chair. You arrive early, stay late, and work harder than anyone else in this building. You ask intelligent questions, you challenge assumptions, and you just prevented us from making a $250 million mistake. I opened my mouth to speak, but he held up a hand. I also know that you lied to get here. You assumed someone else's identity, walked into my company under false pretenses, and convinced my staff that you belonged here. Heat flooded my cheeks. Alex, I can explain. The real Maya, he continued, graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Business School. She has a trust fund, family connections, and every advantage money can buy. She also has zero work ethic, no creativity, and based on her application materials, she would have been a complete waste of our time. I stared at him, confused. I don't understand. Alex leaned forward, his intense gaze fixed on mine. You, on the other hand, have worked 2 jobs while maintaining a perfect GPA. You've overcome obstacles that would crush most people. You have hunger, determination, and raw talent that can't be taught. But I lied to you, I whispered. Yes, you did. He stood up and walked around the desk, stopping directly in front of me. And it was the best thing that ever happened to this company. My heart stopped. What? Maya, I don't care about your background. I care about results. And in 4 days, you've accomplished more than most of our senior analysts do in a month. I looked up at him, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing. You're not firing me. Firing you. Alex laughed, and the sound sent warmth flooding through my chest. I'm promoting you. Promoting me. I'm creating a new position. Junior strategic analyst, reporting directly to me. Full salary, benefits, and a clear path to senior management. I couldn't speak. This was impossible. This was a dream. But first, Alex said, his voice dropping to a whisper, I need to know something. What? Are you interested in just the job? Or are you interested in the man offering it? The question hung in the air between us, charged with possibility. I looked up at him, at this impossibly handsome, brilliant man who had just offered me everything I'd ever wanted. Both, I said honestly, but I need to know that the job offer isn't contingent on my answer. Alex's smile was slow and devastating. The job offer stands regardless. But I was hoping you'd say that. Before I could respond, there was a sharp knock on the door. Diana burst in without waiting for permission, her face flushed with anger. Alex, I need to speak with you about that intern. Her presentation was completely inappropriate, and I think she may have violated several company policies. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me sitting there. Maya shouldn't be in here, Diana said, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. This is a private executive meeting. Actually, Alex said, returning to his chair, Maya is exactly where she needs to be. I was just offering her a permanent position. Diana's face went white. A permanent position. She's a charity case intern who doesn't even belong here. She belongs here more than you do, Alex replied calmly. Maya, would you mind giving Diana and me a moment? I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady. As I walked past Diana, I could feel her hatred radiating off her like heat. This isn't over, she hissed under her breath. Yes, it is, I said quietly. You tried to sabotage me, and I succeeded anyway. It's very much over. I left Alex's office with my head high, knowing that Diana was about to receive the professional dressing down of her life. But I couldn't bring myself to care. I had everything I'd ever wanted. A real job, a real future, and the possibility of something real with Alex. As I walked back to the conference room to gather my things, I passed Brandon and Sophia in the hallway. They were whispering furiously, but stopped when they saw me. Heard you had a meeting with the CEO, Brandon said, his tone dripping with fake concern. Hope you didn't get in trouble for overstepping. Actually, I said, smiling sweetly, he offered me a permanent position. Sophia's mouth fell open. That's impossible. Apparently not. I continued walking, then paused and looked back at them. Oh, and Brandon. You might want to update your resume. I have a feeling there are going to be some changes around here. As I walked away, I heard Sophia whisper, how did the scholarship girl just beat all of us? The scholarship girl. If only they knew that this scholarship girl had just landed the job of her dreams by being brave enough to take a chance on herself. But the real surprise was still coming. Because what I didn't know was that Alex Sterling had been looking for someone exactly like me for years. Someone who could match his intelligence, challenge his assumptions, and steal his heart without even trying. And he was about to prove just how serious he was about both the job offer and the man making it. 3 months later, I stood in the same conference room where I'd given my first presentation, but everything had changed. I was wearing a tailored suit instead of my old blazer, and the nameplate on the table read, Maya, Senior Strategic Analyst. The promotion had come even faster than Alex had promised. The quarterly numbers are in, I announced to the room full of executives, and our decision to avoid the Patterson merger has saved Sterling Industries approximately $300 million in losses. Applause filled the room. I'd been tracking Patterson Group's collapse for weeks, watching as their accounting irregularities were exposed and their stock price plummeted. If we'd gone through with the merger, Sterling Industries would have been dragged down with them. Excellent work, Maya, said Patricia, the CFO who'd become my mentor. I think we can all agree that your analysis was spot on. As the meeting concluded, I gathered my materials, still amazed that this was my life now. The imposter syndrome had faded, replaced by confidence earned through hard work and consistent results. Maya, Alex's voice stopped me as I headed for the door. My office, please. I followed him down the hallway, my heels clicking confidently on the marble floor. Over the past 3 months, I transformed from the scared girl who'd snuck into this building to someone who commanded respect in every room I entered. Close the door, Alex said once we were in his office. I did, then turned to face him. He was leaning against his desk, holding a thick folder. We need to talk, he said. About what? About your future here at Sterling Industries. He handed me the folder. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, performance reviews, client feedback reports, and what looked like a formal job evaluation. These are from every department you've worked with over the past 3 months, Alex explained. The consensus is unanimous. You're not just meeting expectations, you're exceeding them by margins we've never seen before. I flipped through the pages, reading praise from senior executives who had initially dismissed me. Even the legal department, notorious for their harsh criticism, had written glowing reviews of my work. Which brings me to this, Alex continued, walking to his desk and pulling out an envelope with my name on it. Your original application. The one you sent when you first applied for the internship. I took it with steady hands, no longer ashamed of my humble beginnings. I kept it, Alex said, because even then, before I knew your name or your face, I could tell there was something special about you. Your essay, your recommendations, your transcript, they told the story of someone who deserved a chance. But I didn't get the internship, I said, my voice strong. No, you didn't. Because we made the same mistake that companies make every day, we chose pedigree over potential. Alex's expression was serious, but you didn't let that stop you. You made your own chance, and you proved that merit matters more than connections. I took a huge risk, I admitted. You took a calculated risk, Alex corrected, and it paid off for both of us. He walked to the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? I want you to head up a new division. Strategic innovation and analysis. You'd have your own team, your own budget, and direct access to the board of directors. My breath caught. That's a vice president level position. Yes, it is. And you've earned it. I stared at him, hardly believing what I was hearing. 3 months ago, I'd been desperate for any opportunity. Now I was being offered a leadership role at one of the most prestigious companies in the world. There's more, Alex continued. I want you to completely overhaul our recruiting process. No more Ivy League bias. No more assumptions about who belongs in these offices. You want me to change the entire system. I want you to burn it down and build something better. Alex's eyes were bright with excitement. Find talent wherever it exists. Give opportunities to people who have hunger, drive, and potential, regardless of their background. I felt a surge of fierce satisfaction. This was more than vindication. This was revolution. What about Diana? I asked. Diana submitted her resignation yesterday. Apparently, she received a better offer from Patterson Group, right before their collapse became public. Alex's smile was sharp. She'll be dealing with congressional investigations for the next few years. A laugh escaped me, and Brandon. Sophia. Brandon's daddy couldn't save him from his performance reviews. He's been transferred to our satellite office in Nebraska. Sophia, well, let's just say nepotism only gets you so far when you can't actually do the work. I felt the final pieces of my transformation click into place. The scared, desperate girl who had walked into this building was gone. In her place stood a woman who had not only survived but thrived, who had turned her greatest weakness into her greatest strength. So what do you say? Alex asked, ready to change the world. I thought about all the brilliant students like me who were being overlooked, dismissed, written off because they didn't have the right connections or the right background. They deserved better. They deserved a chance. Let's do it, I said. As I walked out of Alex's office with my promotion letter in hand, I passed the elevator where I'd first stood trembling with fear and fake confidence. Now I walked with purpose, knowing exactly who I was and what I was capable of. The girl who'd pretended to be someone else had finally discovered her true identity. A game changer, a barrier breaker, and a woman who refused to let anyone else's limitations define her potential. And I was just getting started.